about science. Processes are about science. What about the art? What are the things that organizations do in your experience, which are the softer aspects, which help create a great leadership pipeline?
I think there are many of them, and the first thing that the organizations need to do is whether the entire leadership vision is there with the entire organization. Are the values of the organization understood by every person in the organization? Are they aligned to the leadership competencies that we are talking about? If you look at any organization, the leadership competencies can be worded very differently, but everybody will have strategy as one of its competency, it will have execution, it will have leveraging competencies, it will have empathy, it will have dignity of individual, or it will have professionalism. They might word it differently. But for me, the key thing is, do the leaders walk the talk of the values, of the belief systems that they have put for themselves, of the philosophy of the organization or the philosophy of leadership? If they don't walk the talk, they don't connect with this to the people of the organization, then no matter what vision you've set for yourself, what mission you've set for yourself, what goals or KRAs you've set for yourself, what performance management systems you've got, they will all be disconnected. Earlier, I heard you say that you need to connect the dots. I think as leaders, on the art side, on the right brain side, these dots need to be connected and made a sensible picture out of that. If you can't draw a sensible picture, then just connecting the dots doesn't make any sense. So I think for leaders on the softer side, I go back to my first statement that I made, conviction is very, very important. Connection is very, very important. And connection through proper, transparent communication is very, very important. So some C's that we keep talking about, the clarity of thought needs to be demonstrated in the behavior, because people pick up signals from the behavior. They don't want to see somebody whose thoughts are very good. They don't want to see anybody who's done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. They want a leader who is authentic. They want a leader who can probably connect to them, relate to them, understand them. And what Daniel Goleman talks about is the connections. Are they able to take the feedback the way they need to take the feedback? Because leaders of today can give feedback to people, but they cannot take the feedback from people. So I think all these soft competencies of empathy, of conviction, of transparency, of clarity, of connecting with the heart, because some of the leaders with whom we've worked and we've liked are the ones who've demonstrated lots of competencies of sensitivity. So is my leader sensitive enough to understand the unspoken, what I'm talking about? And I think those are the leaders who can create an edge and push people to the next level and create and build leaders for the future.
Great. Thanks. Fantastic thoughts there. Dina, one thing that you think on softer side, which is really important and helps create great leaders?
I think Renu said pretty much everything. But I go back to the culture. So you can't fake leadership, and if you can have all the processes, all the systems, all the talk, speeches, but in the end, if people don't see that in practice, it's not going to work. So people have to practice, will have to be absolutely honest. I don't think leaders will get it right. The leaders developing other leaders will get it right all the time. But if there is honesty in it, and you immediately come out and say, look, these are the things that we got wrong, and here is how we are correcting it. And that's the environment that builds the faith, that here's a place that I can actually grow into being something. And if people start feeling that, look, there are things other than the right things, and that's when the faith breaks down, the culture breaks down, and I don't think we really are going to have the type of leadership that will set companies apart. And let's face it, it's not that it's not that binary an environment. There are we talked about. I think I mentioned in my first answer that the quality revenue and then the optimized cost and the expanding horizons is what the company is going to be all about. And there's a whole spectrum of states of existence there, right? And there are ordinary companies that barely make enough revenue and somehow get through the cost problem and make a little bit of profit. They survive. But if you're really talking about great state of existence, then you really need great set of people, and great set of people are not going to be there in the long run if you don't get that culture right and if you don't instill that faith.
Terrific. Ravi, if you permit me, I'd like to change the question. We learn from what happens good in organizations. We also learn from what goes wrong. And therefore, in your opinion, what comes in the way of developing leaders? What are the barriers in developing leaders?
The first important thing in the organizations, in the business, is the bottom line. When the bottom line becomes tighter and tighter, and the commitment on developing the leaderships gets reduced. That is the most important parameter. Then it depends upon how strongly the top management is committed for the developing the leaders is very important. If you see present turbulent situations, the best of the best top companies that has been presented today, they are developing the leaders. They are in the world map. They have reduced the leadership development initiatives now. The most important thing is the commitment of the top management in developing the leaders comes down when turbulent situations.
Okay. And Dr. Ved, what would you add to that in terms of what are the barriers that come in the way of developing leaders in good times as well as bad times?
I would probably make a slightly exaggerated comment here that in general, our Indian culture doesn't encourage us to speak about failures very openly. We like to spend more time talking about the success. So we have heard some of the great global companies, they have a culture that when they do a retro of what happened, they are told to talk about all the things which went wrong and very briefly talk about what went right. But if you look at the Indian mindset generally, we like to talk about what went right and we are a bit cagey about talking about what went wrong. And one more point, this is something which Michael Porter mentioned a few years back, and I would personally agree with him, that though we pretend to be very humble and very simple people, but actually we don't take feedback very positively. When we get criticized, we pretend to nod, and sometimes, we pretend to nod that we agree. But when you go back, we keep doing the same things. So I think somewhere this feedback part and also that unwillingness to talk about failures, I think that are probably barriers. In contrast, to give one more example, in Silicon Valley, there is a rule that, if you fail thrice, you are more likely to get a VC funding because, they believe that you have learned from that experience and now you are going to be a better person. That kind of a culture probably we don't have in India.
Great, Dr. Ved, some fantastic points there. Dina, your thoughts on what comes in the way of developing leaders, barriers?
I think enough has been said, so I don't think it's anything more from my side to add, so probably we'll take your next question maybe.
Yeah, sure. We started with you, Renu, and so we will end with you. Your last words on this question of what comes in the way of developing leaders.
3 things for me, and I'll put it in the same order. When there is incongruence in what you say and what you do, which comes across all levels in the organization, and especially the leaders. Second is, you say it is a non-threatening environment, but you keep building a threatening environment all the time, where people are really scared to talk about failures. So in our organization, we've started something which is called celebrating failures. So can you celebrate it in a non-threatening environment? And the third, I think, is the whole organization not being able to see the big picture of the organization, be it the vision, be it the mission, and where there is a disconnect, and the last person, if you ask him, what do you think this organization stands for? What is the brand that the organization stands for? What is your personal brand? If these 3 things are not aligned, I think there are barriers on the way.
So I think were excellent last words. I would like to now open up the question answers for the audience for the next 15 minutes. So whoever has questions can raise the hand, introduce yourself, name, organization, and then ask the question. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Narendra Agrawal. I'm from Indian Immunologicals Limited, taking care of business HR. My question to panelists is, as we all know, we are living in a highly uncertain times where predictability is a big issue. We can't even predict how the stock market will behave tomorrow. Forget about predicting market shares and growth 10 years down the line. The situations that we have seen in Libya, Egypt, and the most recently in Syria, which presents live examples of how a sudden development in one part of the globe can impact all of us far and wide. The recent situations across the globe have exposed many big leaders, so-called big leaders, who found it really difficult to successfully navigate their organizations through the crisis situations. My question is, then what is that one most important test of leadership? Anyone?
What is the question? Can you
What
repeat?
is the one most important test of leadership that you suggest? How we can test the leadership? What is it that leadership is all about? Because when leaders find it difficult to bring out their organizations in crisis situations, is it only about inspiring people to aspire more, do more, achieve more, or is it about something else?
Okay, so anybody in the panel wants to have a go at the question?
The question, what I understood is, what is the test for the leaders or leadership? That's what you're saying? What is the question for the leaders?
Yeah, so if I can take a quick stab at this question. So I'll probably bring in a global example here rather than talk about our industry, which is still a bit new. But if you look at Toyota Motors, a company which has been criticized recently, but basically I think it's fundamentally a very resilient and a very successful organization. So in 1995, you might be aware of, the yen dollar rate was 360 in 1971. And it went up to 70, the yen appreciated to 79.8 in 1995. It became extremely difficult for Japanese to export cars. But Toyota was ready for that kind of a scenario. If it went to 70 also, they believed that they had the cost structure in place to cope with that kind of a situation. So I think the great companies build that capability to, as the saying goes, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So I think that they have that extra amount of reserve or muscle, that when something goes wrong, they can cope with that. I just gave a small example. I can also talk about our own example. I'm talking about the TVS Group. One powerful story we heard about the TVS Group was that, when there was a time for them, to make a lot of money because it was a very controlled market. I'm talking about, pre-independence days. They took a very principled route and said, look, we will not charge people more. We'll make profit in a very normal kind of a way. And as a result, they have been able to sustain themselves for a long period of time. So I think it's about values and a very long-term vision about where you want to go rather than looking at a very short-term kind of a situation.
Yeah, of course, please.
Please take your mic. I'm very sorry about it. I think just 3 words: the ability of leaders to learn, unlearn, and relearn, and manage this ambiguous environment with flexibility.
I would like to put it this way. A leader must exhibit his emotional balance and sustain the morale and try to improve morale in such kind of turbulent situations.
Great. We had a question here. Can somebody give the mic at the first table?
This is Nimish here, and I think I just thought I could share the question which has been asked. Is ability to take decision is a real test, and especially in the turbulent times, somebody who's able to take decisions is very, very important, because decisions can be right, decisions can be wrong. If the leader is able to take decisions, I think that makes sense. Now my question to the panel is, a lot of time, a lot of leadership, you have a lot of tangible inputs, and possibly you do not have a view on the intangibles. And we have talked a lot of decisions people make on the hunch, intuition. Can you develop this? I
How
know
do you
there is a book
develop
on this.
the hunch for making decisions? How do you make decisions with a blink? You know, that's the question as I see.
No, my question is, can you develop? I'm saying, can you develop the intuition? Can you develop that hunch part, which typically a lot of this?
Yeah, that's right.
I think many, since these are HR professionals, we do talk of MBTI, which are the type indicators, and it talks about your structured way of taking decisions and your intuitive way of taking decisions. And when you're talking about hunch, you're talking about intuitiveness. I think intuitiveness over a period of time develops with a lot of practice. While a lot of data might be available, you can see patterns, you can see trends. With the patterns and trends, your intuitiveness develops with experience. And I think it can be developed. It's not just born, it can also be created and made like leadership is.
Yeah, I'd like to add to this. One of the top company for leaders, the research that Radhika talked about, one of the top companies is General Mills. I think it is either number 1 or number 2 in the world. So they are creating the best leaders or best leadership pipeline. And I was investigating the leadership programs that they have. One of the leadership programs they have is creating mindful leadership. Mindful leadership for them is about the ability for leaders to have dialogues with others and with themselves. And the whole thought is, can you remove all the noise that is operating, which is with regard to either ego or what they've done in the past, and then connect internally with oneself to say what is the right decision from sustainability point of view of both the organization and the world, and have that mindful leadership to take that decision. And they are working through a program for their top leadership and to levels below throughout the globe to create this mindful leadership. So hopefully that answers your point. Yes sir, on that table, on the left hand side, second table.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
I'm Nand, and I work on people processes. There are umpteen number of examples of organizations which, when they were small, were having excellent leadership. All this connect and everything was there, ground level realities were known. But when they are good, they grow. And then they grow, more numbers come, as you have all rightly brought out. What can really a leader do? Not only the organizational leader, even an HR leader, for the benefit of everybody, to remain in touch with the ground level realities. Because my own experience is that maximum number of challenges come when the leaders just get into isolation. So I
think a very good question. Anybody in the panel wants to take this?
I think what large companies are doing is, they are creating smaller business units where each group feels that, they are in charge of what is happening. But in the process, a new challenge comes, that is, how do you leverage the expertise across the decentralized unit? So that is where the collaboration comes in. So it is a challenge which many of us are going through, but if we try to make it too centralized and try to optimize everything, then people lose that entrepreneurial ability. At the same time, when you have a lot of these people running small empowered business units, there is this challenge of collaboration. But I don't need any ready-made fix. But I think it's a striking a balance between decentralization and collaboration.
I was reading what a leader can do.
Yeah. So I can actually share with you again, coming from one of the biggest tractor companies in the world, the global CEO mentors 20 people across the hierarchy and across the globe. So, and they say this is both mentoring as well as reverse mentoring. One of the Indian private sector banks, all the 15 people in the top executive team connect with 4 people 4 times a year over tea and coffee, just having conversation with 4 high potentials. And so keeping in touch with the reality by going beyond your business function, and and that becomes a great source of both mentoring as well as reverse mentoring. Okay, I have a question here, and I'll try and read this. What is the leadership that is necessary to build an organization or institution that can last 100 years plus, notwithstanding market cycles that are going to be, I don't know, will continue to be challenging? Should we do this like Muthuraman of Tata Group says, invest in the society and the ecosystem will protect your organization? We all know Jamshedpur or worry about next CEO, alas, software giant goes through within 30 plus years of existence. Is leadership an internal focus or an external focus? Okay, whatever I understood about this is about, should we just focus on long term? Should we just focus on the sustainability aspect of the society and then things will happen? I don't think so. I think I will quote one of the CEOs of a large FMCG company that I met, and what he said was that we need to always have a bifocal focus. So we need to be looking at things with bifocal lenses, one for the short term, and you need to do some things which are different for the short term, and another one for the long term, which may be at times different. And so yes, both short and the long term will have initiatives that will need to be done, which may be different. So it's not just that we take care of long term, and if we are sustainable and we are looking at sustainability, everything will fall in place, maybe or maybe not. The reality is we are in a quarter by quarter, performance evaluation by the street, and we need to be living up to that while also creating a sustainable enterprise for future. Sir, this is going to be a tough one.
Good evening. My name is Rajiv Balakrishnan.
Just a sec. We have Professor Dr. Chaturvedi.
My question is related to one of the very important landmark in the history of India's business. It is related to sudden failure of top leadership. If the top leadership of the company representing the board, if they are suddenly swept away by some tsunami and there is a leadership failure and the employees are under tremendous crisis, how the company will be led and how the leadership will emerge from the ranks? Let me clear my question. It is related to the Satyam, and I have this information or knowledge that for 2 months it survived. So my question is directed to Dr. Renu Khanna, that in times of crisis, when the top leadership is swept away by any gross failure, how the leadership will emerge and what will be the patterns of leadership development?
Thank you, and I'm very passionate about this question, and I've answered it in many, many forums. The example is right in front of you. This happened on January 7th, 2009, and till April 15th, we didn't have anybody to take over. Till April 15, 2009, Tech Mahindra came. Within those 3 months, we had almost lost about 40 to 50 of our top leaders. This consistent full life cycle leaders where we had built, we actually promoted them to take up the higher positions. So leadership development is not a one-time process. It's a process which takes years to be built to take up those positions. That's point number one. Point number two is, even if the top management goes and the second level people have imbibed the vision, the values of the organization, and all that it stands for, it's very easy for people to rise with little amount of support and training. And that's what we did to the people of the organization. The third level, the third point that I want to make to the question that you've said is that leaders build leaders. So whatever few leaders were left, they entered into a lot of coaching and mentoring and reflective conversations with these leaders to bring them to the next level at speed. So that is what was required at that point of time. And Satyam as an organization demonstrated that. And I think we are very proud of the fact that we carried the legacy of building the leaders to the next level.
And if I may add, Renu, we did, as Jan Hewitt, at that point of time, volunteered to come into Satyam and help. And there was one great thing that I learned there. Most humbly, I'd like to share. You have much better stories, but one thing that we learned was they actually established a round-the-clock radio channel in the organization where there was a completely seamless communication going across the length and breadth of the organization as to what is happening day to day. They didn't know what questions will come, they didn't know what answers are, but they had the fortitude to say, okay, we will be transparent and we will share everything. And that they very quickly had put that together. That's what I remember from those times.
And I think you've tickled my memories way back to 2009. And that was the planet that we called the planet learning. We said people are going through sorrow, people are angry, people are having a lot of resentment, but you have to accept the reality, you have to have hope. And we called it SARA. It was called SARA for us. And we said, let's have action, let's reach the destination. We are all in it together. Sometimes leaders don't have answers to all the questions, but authenticity, clarity, continuous communication to the last person in the organization helped us to succeed, besides all the functional and the leadership skills through coaching and mentoring that we kept providing.
And with that, I'd like to actually come to summarize. I'd like to close the question answer session and summarize what I see has been the key aspects that we've covered. I think really, really very, very grateful to the panelists here. They've been very open, shared some of the fantastic stories as well as insights. I'd like to start with what Dr. Chaturvedi shared about Prakash Iyer. Leaders are like tea bags, need to go into hot water to really create that color and aroma. Sorry, I've made some modifications to that, but sir, that was a great insight. And then Honorable Deputy Chief Minister, he talked about aspects of leadership in society, in corporates, as well as government. And he talked about collaboration, emotional intelligence, being people's person, passion, vision, lead from the front, all of which we also talked about as key competencies. Coming to the first question that I had raised, which was what key capabilities are required. The theme that came here was that leadership is timeless. It's only the context that changes. And therefore, in that timeless leadership, the 5 key competencies for leaders is ability to handle ambiguity, ability to create new stuff and innovation, generational agility or generational intelligence, which also helps expand horizons, leadership connect, which is from heart, or the emotional quotient, and finally, thinking long-term and thinking strategic. Those are the 5 key competencies that came up. Coming to the second question as to processes, and I think the theme there that the panel discussed was the leaders build leaders, and our processes need to be such that they ensure that they are inviting leaders to build future leaders. With regard to the processes that become very important, foundational process we touched upon is performance management and the connected to that reward system. That is the foundational and the first process. The second process that was talked about was defining the right competencies for the organization, assessing people on those competencies and giving feedback, and then putting the right people in the right job. That is the second process. The third process is with regard to development, and in that the career piece is very important, in that mentoring is very important, coaching is very important, and challenging assignments is very important. So those are the aspects with regard to processes. Coming to what are the softer aspects, really 2 things were the key. Number 1, leaders who are willing to walk the talk. And second, connecting with heart. The culture of the organization plays a very important part in developing leaders. And finally, to the fourth question, which was what comes in the way of developing leaders. There were 3 things really. Number 1, lack of commitment to leadership development in bad times. So in bad times, it's not the time to right-size the talent, but it is the time to bright-size the talent. And that was one theme that came up. The second is celebrating failure, allowing people to, not allowing people to take risk, not being humble enough to accept failure, and lack of culture of feedback. So those are the aspects under celebrating, lack of celebration of failure. So that's another barrier. And last barrier is really about incongruence between what you say and what you do. So that, in summary, is, as I saw, the gems that we got from all the panelists. Many, many thanks to all of you, sir, for giving these insights. A ton of thanks to all the participants for listening to us so patiently, and also for asking some brilliant questions. And we are so happy we created enough passion in Dr. Chaturvedi to come up with a question himself. So, so that was great, and we were really fortunate to have Honorable Deputy Chief Minister to come in and share his thoughts. Thanks for this, and Mansi, over to you.
Heartfelt thanks to all the panelists for sharing your experience and giving us such a lively and exciting session here today. May I now request Dr. H. Chaturvedi, Director BIMTech, and Professor K.K. Sinha to please hand over mementos to all our panelists. We'll again follow the alphabetical order and begin with Dr. A.V. Ved Puriswar. Thank you, sir. Shri J. Ravikant Reddy. Shri Dinanath Harpanahalli. Dr. Renu Khanna. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Ajay Soni, for leading this panel today. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of this conclave. I'm sure that for each one of us, this program was an insightful and enriching experience. We look forward to your continuous feedback and engagement with the organizers. On behalf of BIMTech, the National HRD Network, and Aon Hewitt, I would once again like to thank our TV partners, NDTV Profit, the leaders of the sessions for their fantastic efforts, and all the panelists for taking out time from their busy schedules to share their experiences with us. A big round of applause to you, our audience, for being so fantastic today. We have amidst us a few of our alumni, so we would request you to please hold on, wait here inside the hall for a couple of minutes more. To all other participants, I invite you for dinner and cocktails served outside. Please enjoy yourselves. Wishing you a wonderful evening. Thank you.